In the time before history, it is said the valley of Nepal was once a great lake called Nagarad. On the lake, an island. On the island, an eternal flame. To the lake came Manjushri, a Buddhist prophet and forerunner of the Lord Gautama Buddha. With his sword, he cut the mountains. The lake drained, and Manjushri crossed over to the Lotus Island, where he knelt and prayed. Perhaps legend is only the dream of memory. Geology indicates the valley was once a lake. Swayambhu, a shrine beautiful and sacred, now stands where the flame once burned, on a hill overlooking the valley and capital city, Kathmandu, heart of Nepali life and spirit. Of the first people in the age of stone and copper, almost nothing is known. Of the people today, 100 tribes and dialects: Limbu, Gurung, Kirata, Sherpa. In their faces, a pattern of Asia. Tulsi Kumar is of the Newar, the people of the valley, the artisans of Nepal. One of only 3 men allowed to perform this task of ritual and creation. For at this moment, chosen by prayer and astrology, the work he does becomes a pulse beat of wakening life. Tulsi Kumar is a living link with his ancestors and the work they did 300 years before, when the Mala dynasty began the great age of temple architecture. In the 16th century, the Mala kings made the Kathmandu Valley the focal point of their culture. 3 cities: Bhaktapur, Patan, Kathmandu. Nyatapola, a 5-story pagoda, the tallest in the valley. The Golden Gate of Bhaktapur, one of the most intricate and lovely shrines in all Asia. But palaces of clay and wood cannot stand forever. The Kingdom of Nepal is 500 miles long by 100 miles wide, set in the foothills of the Himalayas. Its hills and valleys are like corrugated iron. Travel is from north to south, not across, but through. up the mountains till the roads become tracks and the bridges rope walks. A country of geographical extremes where the climate and monsoon erode even the face of the mountains. So, in the 20th century, survival and restoration for a commercial and completely modern contrast, tourism. The first temples to be restored were in Bhaktapur, the most medieval of the three valley cities. In 1968, the Federal Republic of Germany offered an external aid project to Bhaktapur, initially to supply the city's first sanitary and sewage systems. But temple restoration became part of this, and the birth of something far greater. Another temple in drastic need of attention on the northern edge of the valley, Changunurayan.
The temple of Changunurayan is one of the most important temples in the valley. It's a complete unit in itself, sitting on top of this hill. The whole area is surrounded by a marvelous collection of very old and very important stone sculptures.
John Sanday, head of the UNESCO mission working in Nepal. These statues are some of Nepal's earliest stonework. They date from the first kings, and although they have endured since 200 AD, John Sanday has found problems that are 20th century and typically Western.
One of our major problems here is the question of theft. Because the statues are just lying around in the open, we feel that they are so important that they should be given proper protection. Under our latest program, we're hoping to try and organize Changunurayan into one of our special conservation areas and carry out fairly detailed repairs to not only the buildings, but also establish a good and secure museum for some of the more important statues. The temple itself is in reasonable condition. The main problems have always been the protection of the roofs against vast outbreaks of grass, and these tend to attract moisture, and this moisture then rots the timber, and eventually the structure is damaged and the roof collapses. However, because this is such an important shrine, it's been possible for the local people to maintain the temple in fairly good condition.
This statue in the courtyard of a Nepali village is a representation of the leaning Buddha. His neck is a tethering stake for cows. The dogs urinate at his feet. But the dignity and placid grace are still there, here in this place, when he was fashioned in the 5th century. The standing Buddha, garishly painted to try and restore the former beauty, 1400 years ago. The wheel spins and the prayers ascend. The people move clockwise, always clockwise, around the stupa. Their prayers are spoken, written on flags, and spun on the wheel. Prayer is physical and visible, and part of their lives since birth. Buddhism itself began almost as a protest to Hinduism and rejects the class system of the latter. But here in Nepal, the two come together in harmony. Every Buddhist stupa has at least one Hindu shrine. The temple is built to a sacred pattern. The teachings of Buddha are interpreted in the structure. 13 tiers, topped by an umbrella of polished metal. Each golden ring symbolizes a different heaven and the long path to enlightenment. On all 4 sides, the eyes of Buddha, a temple feature unique to Nepal. Bodhanath is only a mile away from its great Hindu counterpart, Pashupatinath. But the casual blend of religion goes on today as it has always done. On the dome of the Buddhist temple, the monkey is a tolerated intruder, A mile away, he becomes the sacred, inviolate child of Hindu religion. Pashupatinath is the Hindu guardian spirit of Nepal, Lord Protector of all creatures. And this shrine, named after him, is the holiest in the country. Hinduism has no set creed or founder, apparently no final truth or revelation. A myriad diversity of moral creeds and deities. Gods of the Hindu pantheon are numbered in their dozens. But through it all, there is an underlying bond of obedience to one's caste and the scriptures, the Veda and the epics. The Bagmati River, created by Manjushri when he cut the mountains, is now a sacred Hindu river. The pilgrims come to wash in the holy water. The ashes of the dead are cast from its banks. Nowhere else is there such a blend of people and animals, art and architecture, all in the spirit of religion. Every hill, every river and geographical feature is a reason to create a shrine and offer a prayer. The objects of religion seem to outnumber the people who pray before them. The people of the valley are the Newa, the artisans of Nepal. And for these men, the day begins with a 7-mile walk to work. Their forefathers built the temples, and now, under a bold new UNESCO plan, the wheel has turned full circle, and the Newari craftsmen are being encouraged to take up the work of their ancestors. Work is the temple of the Hanuman Doka, the ancient royal palace of Nepal, and the greatest temple of the Malla dynasty. Before they enter the palace, they offer a prayer to Hanuman himself, guardian outside his temple, his face so terrible it cannot be seen. A network of bamboo poles girdles the restoration site, lashed together with hand-twisted rope. What is happening at Hanuman Doka is both restoration and revival. Bhaktapur Tower, the greatest, was the first to be restored. Now it stands again, proud and flamboyant. There, and at Kirtipur Tower, more than 80% of the general structure has been replaced by the 100-strong Nepali workforce. Other temples wait their turn. Lalitipur. The roofs will be lifted. Doors and windows removed in whole sections. The walls reduced to their component bricks so the rotten fabric can be cleared away and the restoration proper begun. Hanumandoka will not just have a facelift, it will be reassembled, literally piece by piece. As the Newari rebuild the temples, there is nothing between them and the craftsmen of 3 centuries before. All their tools are handmade, blessed and purified, and used only for the work in hand. Restoration is foremost, but some of the statues and struts are too far gone to be saved. So replicas are made, cut, chiseled and fitted into place. There are no nails or iron joints. The new becomes part of the old, and when the wood weathers, the face of centuries will be on the temple again. Concentration and patience for the painstaking work of restoration. The statues that can be saved are first cleaned of all dirt. Sometimes more than 8 layers of paint have to be removed. Hands, mouth and body are cleaned, then lightly brushed and coated with a chemical preservative. The temple bricks are of a special type called talaya. The technique of making them to exactly the same color and shape had to be learned again. UNESCO research finally pinpointed an area in a paddy field where the quality and chemical analysis of the clay were identical. The completed brick is trimmed at an angle, wetted and glazed. The bricks are then fired in an open-air kiln and laid out in stacks ready for use. This is how every temple in the valley must have begun, born of clay and the heat of the sun. The work will continue till all the temples stand as they did. And the artisans from the small village guilds will do the work themselves, just as their European counterparts built the great cathedrals. One of the hidden influences behind this revival of art and skill, why this man sits in his doorway and the Newari artisans walk 7 miles to work every morning, is tourism and the thrusting reality of the 20th century. These will not go into the temples. They will be sold in the bazaars and marketplaces, not by the quality of their workmanship, but simply by the weight and value in metal. The trappings of Western civilization came to Nepal with the Rana, a dynasty of hereditary prime ministers. The medieval kings had built the palaces and temples. In the 18th century, the Rana usurped their power and built the banks and government buildings. Their 200 years of dominance ended in 1950, and Nepal was opened to the outside world. The statue is ready. Ready for the final ancient ritual that will give it spirit and life. Tulsi Kumar must bless his carving. The eyes are open, but they must have vision. Tika, fire, rice and prayer, the ceremony of puja. For hundreds of years, festivals symbolize a life force of Kathmandu, of religion and spirit. But how far can European materialism change a society whose values are not born of gain? Not while the temples stand, for the flickering lights remind of another flame burning on an island in the lake of Nagarad, of when the waters fell and the temples rose in the valley of the sacred fire.